Have you ever been very concerned about a grade? Maybe you've had to balance your life factors with your schoolwork, or you haven't been able to finish most of your homework on time. Did you ever have an occasion where you had an assignment about something you didn't know would be graded? Or have you ever gotten so desperate for good grades you started to cheat, plagiarize, or steal to earn them? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then think to yourself, am I more concerned about my grades than am I with actual learning? If you're dealing with this conflict, you're not alone. Know that. Every year, students worldwide are desperate for good grades that they go out of their way to cheat and plagiarize just to keep their grades up. Maybe someone in this audience has cheated. Maybe you have. If you're watching this and you've done anything that I mentioned earlier, know that I'm not asking you to confess your sins, nor to stop focusing on grades. What I'm asking you to do is this: reflect on your actions, develop a more stable mindset, and accept that learning is more important than these letters that come back on a daily basis. Of course, this background has caused me to formulate the following question. Are grades a motivation for students to work harder and be responsible, or are they really just a way that evokes pressure on students, therefore dragging them down? To start, I would like to state that it is no surprise that several students receive pressure from getting a bad grade. The fear of a bad grade, to say nothing of a bad grade itself, can be a source of anxiety and stress, and that fear can inhibit the learning and harm academic performance. This holds the concept in which the majority of anxiety is found in the fear of the consequence and not the consequence itself. Because no one, believe me, no one, wants to get a bad grade, they turn to their only companions: cheating and plagiarism. It's more common than you think. In the past few years, around 70,000 students were surveyed, and it was shown that 58% of them had plagiarized, and 95% of them revealed to have cheated. That's a big number. Because grades determine how one retains certain information, it can be seen regularly that students tend to receive praise for being smart rather than how much effort they put in. This makes it important to acknowledge the difference between a student who earns an A without putting much effort and a student who works hard for hours but in the end gets below an 80. Overall, one can conclude that sadly, the grading system is more memory-based. However, many believe that the risk of low grades are important because they promote effort and diligence, and without it, the level of effort and responsibility can drop. Furthermore, the grading system cannot be changed without causing a few cultural disruptions. After all, they have been ingrained in the education system for a long time. Even so, the system can negatively affect many students, both in achieving greatness by incorrect means and ensuring they aren't dragged down. Now, I'm going to relate with you for a moment. There have been several occasions where when I have an assignment and I don't know the answer to a question, I would look it up on the internet, or I would ask my classmates to help me, which would generally and admittingly result in a sort of copying of each other's answers, to a point where we would just copy the answers and then simply just change the words to therefore paraphrase them and make them look like our own. It's fine for me to ask my classmates for help, but it goes without saying that it has often led to copying the answers from others, and it is more of an understatement for me to say that I feel guilty for doing this, even if I believed that I had a reason to do so. As much as I know that copying is wrong, the thought of having to get a good score on an assignment or a test makes me feel inclined to have to use other people's answers. Now, aside from being concerned with balancing my grades, another concern I have is when my parents get involved. If anything happened, they would confront me about it, and sometimes they wouldn't be happy. They wouldn't be happy if my grades were good, obviously. But if me or my brother got a score that wasn't pretty, things wouldn't end well. Now, have your parents ever gotten involved with your grades and felt that doing it well at school is the only way you can keep them happy? When parents factor in, it can increase the stakes for students. In 2014, a survey among high school students found that 80% of them thought that their parents cared more about their achievement than their happiness or altruism. In some cases, parents got so concerned about their children's grades that several schools even had to limit the number of times parents are allowed to access their children's grades online. If you're a parent and you're watching this, think to yourself, how does the way that I treat my child according to their grades affect their mindset? Even if not minimizing their academic effort, many students base their self-worth on academic performance, typically in grades, and ultimately letters. This can demonstrate sometimes students see life and how they behave based on grades, which can lead to them minimizing their self-worth. In a school environment, many people who feel uncomfortable share their grades and are pressured into doing so by their peers. Here's what I mean. After getting a grade back, have you ever seen your classmates tell each other their grades, or has someone asked you what your grade was? I know I've seen it a lot of times. This may be seen as constructive criticism, but test sharing can easily get to the point where the only reason students start to put in effort is to top their peers, and at that point, it is unconstructive. In sharing test scores and grades, students place value on others' achievements other than on their own. Every coin has two faces, so there are some merits of the grading system and some demerits. For some reasons, it's good for the education sector, but for social reasons, it is unfit. Whereas it succeeds in encouraging students to work hard and diligently, it fails due to how it can destroy the self-worth of many. But what matters the most is this. In terms of common sense, what does a high score or a good grade say about you? Nothing really. And what does a low score say about you? Also nothing. What matters is that we are all human beings and our lives have more worth than these mere numbers and letters that come back on papers. Now, however, this is a kind of perspective that you won't get until you graduate from high school, but take it from me, who's right now in high school, and I understand your pain. It's not the end of the world. In 10 years from now, odds are you probably won't remember what you got in school, or even if you do, you're not really going to care. Now, I'm not saying you need to stop worrying about your grades, but I am going to say that if you do bad, it's not something that you should beat yourself up for, because at the end of the day, you need to remember this. Your brain feeds on knowledge, not on results. Thank you.